I was pretty bad once, actually. Austin Poetry Slam, how we doing tonight? That bad, huh? My name is S.C. Says. I've lived in Austin, Texas for 6 years now. Doing my best to kind of live up to our motto. Now, I'm already pretty weird. I'm a Jamaican and Mexican, or a Jamexican. Mudblood. I grew up in a non-culturally diverse neighborhood in Grand Prairie, Texas. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of weird. I love heavy metal and folk music, so if you can shred on a guitar, that's awesome. But if you can shred on a ukulele, man. So that's kind of weird. I played the flute for 3 years. Not a lot of people know that about me. I'm also the kind of person that if you tell me I'm not gonna like something, I try to like it just to spite you. So I did that for 3 years until they tried to get me to march with the thing. I cry at animated movies consistently. I'm not sure if that's weird or there's like a deeper issue there. Yeah, I'm a pretty weird guy. Thanks, Tim. Thank you. But I think that the weirdest thing for me growing up was like figuring out how to be black. That was weird. Because for those of you who are, you know, they don't like give you a manual when you're born that's like, follow these steps and you'll be black. You just kind of have to figure it out as you go. And like I said, I grew up in a non-culturally diverse neighborhood, so when I was like 7 or 8, I had no idea I was black. I don't know, you just don't notice things like that when you're that age. But as I got older, little things started to happen that kind of clued me in that I wasn't quite like everybody else. So my first poem is what that experience was like for me. It's called Crayon Box. L'Oreal now has a makeup that takes the guesswork out of finding your perfect shade of foundation. Well, L'Oreal, it took you long enough, didn't it? Where the hell was this when I was in elementary school? Or hey, I'd settle for junior high. All those mornings, I had to look in a mirror and see a skin tone that didn't quite match my foundation of friends. This would have come in handy, finally. A product that lets me feel comfortable in my own skin. I mean, doctors can practically grow you another chin now, and it's been 28 years since my sojourn began. I know, I didn't wear makeup back then, but if I'd been exposed to this miracle product beforehand, imagine all the friendships I could have saved. My childhood consisted of a color palette composed mostly of a lighter pigment than my own, and if our life's painting only consists of the colors of people we put in it, my painting looked a lot like a newspaper lacking content. And as the only sentence on the page, it wasn't hard to stand out, so I tried to blend in. Tried not to attract attention for fear of being mentioned. I changed the way that I dressed to seem less confrontational. Changed the way I spoke to seem more agreeable. Changed the way I breathed so as not to be too audible, but I couldn't change my flesh, no matter how bad I wanted to. And I began to notice that I was always the black friend my friends' parents are referring to. Notice that it wasn't necessarily me girls didn't find attractive, but the skin I was dressed in. Notice that being mixed and being black weighs just as heavily on the suburban scale of normality, and I'll admit, it took me a long time to realize what they meant when they asked me, what are you? As if my overall classification of human being wasn't quite registering on their one of us radar, and I was lucky because I had friends who didn't seem to notice me struggling to be like them, but the environment I was in never let me forget that I was the exception, not the rule. What if, as children, we were forced to grow up in a school as colorful as our crayon boxes? Imagine how beautiful the stories we painted together would be if we began to see unique and beauty as synonyms and not commodities we can exploit to sell stories. If the sentences, she's pretty for an Indian girl, or he's smart for a Mexican, or he's tall for an Asian guy could exist without a qualifier attached to them. She's pretty, he's smart, he's just really tall, period. Color only matters to people who are afraid that one day theirs might not. And I've been afraid most of my life of offending those people with my existence, but I'm developing a resistance. A new set of eyes that sees beauty in the abnormalities. I'm writing stories that tell of colors first cameras couldn't quite capture. Full of characters so diverse in complexion, you'd have a hard time finding similarities in anything but our laughter. So I'm sorry, L'Oreal. You're a little too late. You see, I no longer need a cream in a bottle to help me blend in. I'm a little too busy trying to stand out.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. So I love slam poetry, obviously, because it, surprise, it allows the audience a really quick peek into what makes someone truly tick. And based on your reactions, I get to see that some of the hard things that I've been through, some of the circumstances I've had to overcome, resonate with some of you as well.
Yes.
That's literally how human connection happens. We just share our stories. Something about hearing another human being have the same hurts or struggles or the same goals or aspirations draws us closer to that person. I do a lot of teaching on empathy through slam poetry, and empathy is amazing because thanks to empathy, we don't have to be struggling with the same kind of situations or circumstances to imagine what similar situations or circumstances would be like for us, right? How we would handle it. This scene is amazing. It is the most welcoming thing that I've ever been a part of. That includes like church, like dance groups. I did that for a while. Athletic groups, anything, because you're literally just coming together to hear people's story. There's something so beautiful about that. And something else I love is that you can literally write about anything. So this next poem is about a bad day that I had and someone I met in the midst of that. It's called A Kindness.
Yeah.
It's been a long day. The kind of day where my motivation and procrastination couldn't decide which of the two looked better on me, so they dressed me in mediocrity and sent me on my way. On my way to a day where none of my childhood dreams came true, a day even Dr. Seuss probably would have rhymed with suckish. Where the most exciting thing that happened to me was that my gas light came on, and to top it all off, I'm stuck in line at my least favorite place, Walgreens. I hate Walgreens. Got me all excited about the membership, then elected to price their product so high, the membership only served to bring them back down to reality that is killing me. They call 35 cents off of greediness a bargain. And this hag in front of me is pulling out her checkbook. Lady, I am sure the 1930s were a swell time, but some things are not better the old-fashioned way, and her hands shake as she pays for her gallon of water, 6 bananas, loaf of bread, jar of peanut butter, apple granola bars, 4 bottles of Gatorade, 2 Hershey's chocolate bars, because why the hell not? 3 packs of spearmint gum and those chocolate cakes from Hostess. And I only know this because in the time it took for her to find that checkbook in that suitcase on her arm, they put a man on Neptune and... Brilliant. She forgot the milk. And as we all wait for the store associate to run to grab her calcium liquid, I begin to associate this old woman with purgatory. This must be the stuck behind the arthritic old lady at the grocery store level. And I am sure, for some, this level isn't that bad, but it's been a long day. And this woman smells like old people. I'm beginning to wonder how she escaped from the nursing home. But right before I can ask this fossil what the Great Depression was like, mercifully, the associate returns with her 1%, the cash register dings and opens. It's over. At least I didn't kill an old woman today. She collects her belongings, and at a speed evolution would respect, moves so slowly to the door that I could scan my item, pay for it, grab my card and receipt, go to leave, and she is just now reaching the front doors, where she's conveniently blocking the only exit. Old lady, you picked the wrong day to examine my morality. I surge to give her a sharp push into the portrait frame of my day, but I miss. Because she has tricked me to surprisingly swift as she makes her sharp right. And as I stumble through the door, I struggle to regain composure. As my mind works to clarify the scenario I am seeing, I pause. As my day's largest mountain kneels down and the burden she carries is unloaded on the homeless man laying down at the front of the store with a sign that reads, "You are loved," the gallon of water, 6 bananas, a loaf of bread, jar of peanut butter, apple granola bars, 4 bottles of Gatorade, 2 Hershey's chocolate bars, because why the hell not? 3 packs of spearmint gum and those chocolate cakes from Hostess, and of course, the 1% milk almost forgotten as she empties every item in her bag for the first time today. My mind is quiet. As I bear witness to a development, this is what love looks like. With a smile and a wave, she says goodbye to the man who'll probably never know the name of the whisper of humanity on 2 legs walking away, but as she turns back to procure her original purpose, I stop her and ask her who she is. And with a smile, like a vaccine curing my melancholy disease, she says to me, "I'm Ingrid. Ingrid, thank you for making this day beautiful. Thank you." I love telling that story, mainly because it makes me look bad, and we never like to do that. We never like to show any of our flaws, even though subconsciously we know we all have these cracks, these chips in our making. I am incredibly impatient, and I'm not above pushing old ladies out of the way. You should know that about me. The beautiful thing about empathy, though, is that you don't have to be going through the same experience to be able to imagine what that circumstance would be like for you. That's why I could share that story with you, and you can imagine being in a hurry or being anxious, or the shock you might feel after learning something new about someone that forces you to completely change the way that you see them. And that can happen after learning just a little bit about somebody's story. Something I tend to do in pretty much all of my shows is I talk about mental health because I don't think it gets talked about enough. And so if you guys would humor me and do me a favor, if you guys could just close your eyes. I won't know it's really bright in here, but please just humor me and close your eyes. And if you would raise your hand if you struggle with any kind of mental health condition. It could be depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, anything. Now, if you don't want people to know that, feel free to go ahead and put your hand down. But open your eyes and take a look around you. And I want you to recognize that attached to that hand is a human being. I think when we talk about mental health, a lot of the time it's hard to put perspective around, you can put your hands down. It's hard to put perspective around the statistics, right? But attached to every one of those hands that was in the air is a human being who's struggling with some additional complication in addition to just life. And so this next poem is for everybody who raised their hand, was brave enough to raise their hand, and especially for the people who aren't yet. This poem is called Dwarf Planet. Depression isn't a real mental illness in the same way that Pluto isn't a real planet. The same way that global warming is just a string of environmental coincidences. The same way that undiagnosed diabetes isn't that dangerous. It's funny how our concept of science never really expanded much after we were 10. If you can't see it, then it must be the government trying to steal your money again, at least until the bullet registers a 7 on your family's disaster scale, or your friends discover that you traded in your striped tie for a tight noose. I wonder, how come we haven't developed hazard signs for people yet? Too often we fail to realize the effects a light storm can have on flood-prone lands. That depression accounts for nearly 2/3 of the over 40,000 suicides in the US. That the amount of patients with clinical depression increases 20% every year. That statistically speaking, there are at least 50 people in this room who view living another day as both an accomplishment and the problem. Yet we still treat depression like a mathematic equation with a simple solution. We're prescribed cliche sentences like, just get a hobby, have some coffee, are you exercising, just take a pill already. That depression is just us not coping with being or trying hard enough, when really, the rock that's furthest from the sun's gravity is one trying the hardest just to keep moving. Pluto is now considered a dwarf planet. A dwarf planet orbits the sun just like other planets. It's just not as vocal about it. It just takes longer, has a harder time clearing things out of the way, has a hard time seeing the sun because the other illnesses keep covering it up. It's known for being desolate, reclusive, hard to reach, for being on the brink of a nervous system, too temperament cold to feel any kind of warmth from casual eclipses. It's known for being all this, while being the largest unknown entity in our galaxy. Short of a black hole, short of it being too late to do anything about, short of you spiraling further into yourself so deep, you start to wonder if a Big Bang could start you over again. In 1937, the German passenger airship LZ-129 Hindenburg famously erupted into flames after a single spark ignited. A spark, which humanity has used to keep itself alive for millennia, sent 35 people to their graves, a testament to just how dangerous a spark can be. And how often we ignore basic chemistry. When you struggle with depression, everything is a potential Hindenburg, is a potential black hole. The smallest overcorrection can spark disaster, can send you spiraling faster to the ground, can ignite the oxygen you intended for breathing, for surviving, and use it against you. People think depression is just being really sad. But what their telescopes can't see is that that's just the beginnings of a gravity that grows stronger every year. And we're too concerned with mapping the next trendy planet to notice the small ones slipping further and further away, and one day, you may wake up to realize that even the smallest planet can leave a crater so large, you wonder how you never saw it coming. Thank you. So I have a little sister who's just like perfect. Like everything I ever did in my life, she did better, you know? So I graduated 11th in my high school class of 600, top 3% for those of you playing at home. And I was like, sucks to suck, little sis, gonna have a hard time beating that. So she graduated 4th out of 700. And I'm not bitter, you know, whatever. In spite of that, in spite of us being really competitive, we've always been really close. We're only 3.5 years apart, so we've always been there for each other. We've always had each other's backs. So when I got the call that she was in the hospital for an overdose. I was shocked. We were close. We could talk about anything, but apparently that didn't include feeling depressed or being suicidal, and I nearly lost her because of that. That is why I try to talk about mental health everywhere that I go. That is why it is so important for you to listen to the stories of people around you and take it seriously, because you may not get another chance to. Now, before I transition to my last piece, I just got onto this new social media platform called Instagram. You guys probably haven't heard of it. It's really new. You guys probably haven't heard of it yet. My handle is @S.C says. I do a lot of short form poetry that I'll never do on stage, but you can follow me for that and just where I'm at. Also, I don't really sell merch. All of my pieces are on my Patreon page, so if you guys are interested in just hearing more of my work, come kick it with me at the end of the set. I'll be sitting over there, give you more information on that. So I typically write about small moments in my life that have made a lasting impact. And there's been a moment in my life that I've been thinking about for years that I finally wrote a poem about a friend of mine. And this last piece is called At a Glance. I never know what to say when I'm at an art gallery and I find the artist's work hideous. Nice, try? Because I get it, obviously they put a lot of work into this, or someone thinks they did, or someone owed them a favor. The point is, I get that art takes work, and I can appreciate that some effort was put into this thing. Maybe I just don't know the history. Maybe the artist suffers from anxiety, can only paint with colors that don't cause them to panic. That's intriguing. Or maybe their parents abandoned them in a wheat field, and no matter how hard they try, wheat fields just pop up in their artwork. That tells a story. But there's only so much information I can gain at a glance. When I met her, I was a freshman in high school. She was the lead in the school play, and she could teach classes to Blue Jays the way people just flocked to her. She was like, if your favorite college football team always beat Alabama. Always. Like, if Chick-fil-A was open on Sundays. Like, if objects in the mirror were the exact distance you thought they were. So naturally, I assumed she would talk to me when they figured out how to make colonoscopies more appealing, which is to say, never. Now you have to understand, I was going through my gothic stage, which, you know, we all went through. So after my first audition, when I didn't get a role, the fact that she said anything to me was unique. At a time when I knew who I was, like I knew Newton's third law of thermodynamics. I didn't. She asked my name. Twice, because I embarrassingly looked around to make sure it was me she was addressing. She asked if I'd been nervous. I said, yeah, it must have been obvious. She said, nervousness looks a lot like confidence on me. That 3 years ago she stood where I'm standing, that her name was Melanie. She looked forward to seeing what I would become. And I wouldn't know it then. But what she said would play a role in every stage I ever touched. She had a way of seeing you like one of those funhouse mirrors. Only the reflection she gave you of yourself was the beautiful version. The you that saw hope as a destiny, that held on to possibility like an old friend, the version that would smile back and say, you have no idea, do you? How great you are. She saw the best you. Even if you couldn't, it would smile in your direction until you got the message that this world is just waiting for you to feel it. Alive. She was the kind of girl who could sell out a funeral. I know, because she did. She could see the good in anyone, even the man at the convenience store asking for a lift who will spend the rest of his life in prison for taking hers away. I have a hard time finding beauty in tragedy. Tend to only want to see disaster at a distance, and I only got to see the art piece of her life for 2 years. A glance, really. But it was enough to change the way I saw myself, so while others might only see tragedy, I see memories. Her legacy paints every stage I am lucky enough to see. Her spirit colors my words so that they tapestry into meaning. Her presence presents poetry, even without physically being here. When I go to art shows now, I try to take the time to read the stories of the artwork. I realize these pieces deserve more than a glance. A good friend of mine taught me that. Thank you. My name is S.C. Says. I'll be hanging out in the back. Thank you guys so much. This is my home, and you guys make it that way. Thank you, thank you, thank you.